So the system that we will be discussing for today is the endocrine system. So what is the endocrine system? This system consists of glands. Okay, so they are separated widely in our bodies. And these glands would consist of a group of secretory cells, no? Because they are glands that produce hormones, so they have secretory cells. And these cells are surrounded by a network of capillaries. Okay, so why are they surrounded with capillaries? Because the hormones produced by the glands would diffuse into the capillaries or blood vessels directly. Okay, so that means coming from the gland, producing the hormone, then the hormone enters the bloodstream directly. So these glands are referred to as ductless glands. That means there are no ducts present. No? So once the hormone is being secreted, it directly enters the bloodstream. No, it does not flow into any ducts anymore. That's why the endocrine glands are also called as your ductless glands. Okay, so this picture shows you the different glands in the body, no? Coming from the most superior part to the most inferior portion of the body. You have the pineal body, the pituitary gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, thymus, and so on and so forth. Okay, these are the major endocrine glands. Okay, let's say a gland produces a hormone, and then this hormone goes into the bloodstream. So it travels through the bloodstream, and once it reaches its target cell, the hormone binds to its receptor. So that's what you call a receptor. This is the binding site of a protein. In this case, the protein is a hormone. So once the hormone binds to its receptor, it cascades and changes and it cascades signals. Okay, so this is like a switch to a certain chemical or metabolic process, okay, in that particular cell. So you have two kinds of hormones. These can be a water-soluble hormone or a lipid-soluble hormone. Once it is a water-soluble hormone, ang receptor niya is on the surface of a cell membrane. Okay, remember that your cell is made up of a bilayer of phospholipids. And phospholipids are hydrophobic, no? That's why a water-soluble hormone cannot enter directly. It has to attach to its receptor that is present only in the surface of a cell membrane. Comparing to a lipid-soluble hormone, since they are lipid, that means they are similar to the phospholipid bilayer of your cell membrane. These types of hormones, your lipid-soluble hormones, can enter directly through the phospholipid bilayer of the cell, and the hormone receptors are located inside the cell. Okay? Okay, so these are example of your lipid-soluble and water-soluble hormones. So I already explained, no, anong difference between the two. Your lipid-soluble, these are the steroids, such as your glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids, and your thyroid hormones. Then the water-soluble are all of this: adrenaline, noradrenaline, insulin, and glucagon. So, yung level ng hormone in the blood is variable. Iba-iba siya. And this is actually regulated well, no, within its normal range. And they are usually released in response to a specific stimulus. Okay? Yung kanilang regulation can either be through a negative feedback mechanism That's most of the time, but there are also hormones regulated by a positive feedback mechanism. So we discussed no before yung oxytocin, yes, for the positive feedback. Okay. Here you will see, no, like I mentioned, yung positive feedback mechanism that regulates the hormone oxytocin during labor. So you all already know this one. Okay, you just review your concept of positive feedback mechanism. Okay, now let's have the different functions of your endocrine system. First is the metabolism and tissue maturation. Okay, so yung mga hormones, they regulate all kinds of metabolism, no? Cellular metabolism, the maturation of tissues, especially of the nervous system. Second, iron regulation, which helps regulate the blood pH plus these ions, sodium, potassium, and calcium. No? So you will remember later. Okay? Paano siya nagre-regulate nitong mga ions, sodium, potassium, and calcium concentrations in the blood. Then the water balance. Okay, later you will remember also if I discuss how no water balance is being regulated by our endocrine system. Then the immune system regulation. Okay, kasama din siya kasi meron ding effect yung hormones on the immune cells. Okay. Heart rate and blood pressure regulation. So, in preparation for a physical activity, certain hormones would have an effect on the heart and the blood pressure, no, sa blood vessels. To allow the body, baka need ng fight or flight response. Okay? Baka endanger ang state, no, which needs alertness and muscle strength, or baka for strenuous or vigorous exercise, okay? Depending on the situation. The control of blood glucose, okay, we will discuss later, and other nutrients, no, which hormones actually regulate the blood glucose levels. Then the control of reproductive function. So we have many sex hormones that is produced by our endocrine glands. Okay, that's why it is part of the regulation of the reproductive functions. And then uterine contractions and milk release. So itong dalawang to, only one hormone is responsible. Uterine contractions, if you remember during the positive feedback, it's your oxytocin. Now, meron din siyang effect on the mammary glands. Okay? Your oxytocin increases the milk letdown reflex or the milk expulsion. Okay? So, dalawa ang effect ng iyong oxytocins, not only on the uterus, but also sa breast in lactating females, no? Our breastfeeding mothers. Okay. So let's discuss now the three ways how hormones are regulated. First is the blood levels of chemicals, no? So this is in response to the amount of certain chemicals present in the blood. For example, mataas ang sugar sa blood, our pancreas will release insulin. Kasi ang effect ng insulin is to lower down blood glucose by increasing the uptake of the sugar, no, going back to the inside of the cell. Yun yung effect. Now, kapag kulang naman ng sugar, no, ang blood, which is also dangerous, okay? Kung low ang blood sugar, there's also another hormone responsible to increase the breakdown of glycogen, no? Para ma-increase ang glucose level in the blood, and that's your glucagon. So later we will fully discuss that. Then the nervous system is another main system that regulates your hormone production, as it regulates a lot of mechanism in the body. Okay, so isa dito is the hormone epinephrine, which is coming from your adrenal gland. Okay, this is stimulatory to your nervous system. Then the hormones is also controlled by the amount of hormones in the blood, or the kind of hormones that are present. For example, if there's a presence of this particular hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone, which is produced by the anterior pituitary gland, so ang effect nito will be stimulatory to the thyroid gland. Okay? And ang effect ng thyroid gland would be stimulatory also. So, anong gagawin ni thyroid gland? It will produce more and more thyroid hormones. Okay? Okay. So, what is the pituitary gland? No? This is the master gland, also known as hypophysis. Yan yung other name niya. So it secretes a lot of hormones, okay? And these have numerous body functions. Later, we have a table to discuss, no, different hormones produced by the glands. Okay, so we also need to discuss the hypothalamus, which is a part of the brain, and they are, no, closely located. Near lang siya sa pituitary gland. Okay? So, yung hypothalamus mo would also be secreting a lot of hormones that usually have an effect to your pituitary gland. Okay? Aside from that, yung hypothalamus mo, meron din siyang other function. It's the seat of your emotions. So, remember, when you say, I love you from the bottom of my heart, okay, which is the heart is a pumping cardiac muscle, no? When it comes to emotion, it should be, I love you from the bottom of my hypothalamus, okay? Because it's the seat of your emotions. Okay, so let's see the associated structures of your pituitary gland. So, nasa cranium siya. Okay? So, itong bone na to, which is called your sphenoid bone, we learned this, no, in the skeletal system. This is part of your cranium, or part of the cranial, one of the cranial bones. Okay? Nandito, merong small depression. This depression is called your sella turcica, also known as the hypophyseal fossa. Nandyan located si pituitary gland. Okay? Yung pituitary gland is only pea size, no? So, parang munggo. Maliit lang siya. So, here, nandito banda si hypothalamus. So, magkalapit lang talaga sila, no? Slightly superior lang konti si hypothalamus kay pituitary gland. Yan yung kanya, nandyan yung optic chiasma mo, where your optic nerves cross, no? Your right and left optic nerves cross, and this is naman for vision. Then sa posterior portion niya is your medulla oblongata, no? Nandyan yung iyong pons. Okay, ito yung itsura ng pituitary gland. So, ayan siya, no? If you look closely, it is divided into two. Meron kang anterior division, which is called your adenohypophysis, and an posterior division called your neurohypophysis. Okay? Yung stalk dyan that connects your posterior pituitary papuntang brain is called the infundibulum. So you remember, no? Si posterior pituitary is directly connected siya. Okay, that's why it's called neurohypophysis. Okay, the structure, maliit lang siya. 1 centimeter in diameter ang iyong pituitary gland and very light, no? About 0.5 to 1 gram lang yan. So that's the location, yung saddle depression in your sphenoid bone. It's called the sella turcica. Okay? So, inferior to your hypothalamus, ang kanyang location, and it is connected to it by a stalk tissue. So, yung nakita nyo ba yung infundibulum, no? Pa-connect yun to the hypothalamus. So, balikan nyo yung picture later. Okay? So divisions of your pituitary gland can either be anterior and posterior, no? But we will discuss first posterior kasi siya yung pinaka-simple. Dalawa lang yung hormones na pinoproduce ng posterior pituitary gland. So we mentioned other name is also neurohypophysis kasi siya yung directly connected with the hypothalamus, okay, to the brain. That's why it's called neurohypophysis. It is continuous with the brain via a structure called your infundibulum. Okay. So, ang kanyang origin, embryonic origin niya is the inferior part of the brain. Okay? So, definitely, your posterior pituitary is a portion of the brain, no, that originates on the inferior part of the brain in the area of your hypothalamus. Okay, while your anterior pituitary, which is also known as your adenohypophysis, it's an outgrowth, no, of the embryonic oral cavity. Okay, so the roof of the oral cavity, dyan siya nanggaling, no? So, see, they are different in origin. Si anterior sa roof of the oral cavity, while your posterior pituitary is coming directly, no, from the inferior portion of the brain. Okay, so paano siya? Yung hormones that are produced in the neurons, no? Neurons kasi nasa brain ka, of the hypothalamus will enter this capillary network. No? And then afterwards, if they reach their target organ, which is the pituitary gland, whether anterior or posterior, anong function? They act as releasing hormones. No? Kumbaga, they will stimulate your pituitary gland to release certain hormones. Kaya, yung hormones produced by your hypothalamus, most of them have these names, no? May apelyido sa pangalan nila. Releasing hormones. I'll show you later. And then, ang effect niya is to stimulate the anterior pituitary to either increase the secretion or meron din namang mga inhibitory hormones ang hypothalamus. So, ang effect nito to the anterior pituitary is to decrease the secretion respectively. Okay? So, balik tayo sa posterior. Since yung posterior pituitary gland natin is directly connected, no, to the hypothalamus, so ang kanyang function is mainly storage lang. Okay? It stores the hormones, antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin, yun lang. And it releases it, no? It secretes it once needed. Okay, but these two are coming and produced by the neurons of the hypothalamus. So once they are produced, they will be stored here, posterior pituitary. Then when needed, your posterior pituitary would have to release or secrete the two hormones. Compared to the anterior pituitary gland, which themselves produce the hormones. Okay, let's discuss the two hormones from your posterior pituitary. The first hormone is your antidiuretic hormone, also known as your ADH. No, no, diuretic. Diuresis means urination. So, stop or inhibit your urine production. Yun yung parang meaning niya. Antidiuretic hormone. So, ano ang kanyang effect? If there's ADH, it will bind to the receptors in the kidney tubules, and it will signal the tubules to increase water reabsorption instead of releasing or excreting the water. I-reabsorb niya, therefore less water is lost from the body and less urine production, no? So maliit yung urine volume. So when do you need ADH? If you're dehydrated, no, you need ADH. If you need to increase your blood volume, you have to absorb more water. Okay? And that's the effect of your ADH. While the second hormone, called your oxytocin, as we already discussed, no, ang kanyang effect is on the smooth muscles of the uterus. So increasing uterine contraction and milk ejection or milk letdown. That's the effect of this hormone to the mammary glands. Okay? So this is important for breastfeeding or lactating women. So for milk ejection, no, or milk letdown, okay? Milk letdown reflex. Yan siya. Iba din yung milk production, okay? The milk production, iba na hormone. But for the milk injection or milk letdown, it's your oxytocin. Okay. So, dalawa lang ang hormone ng posterior pituitary. But for your anterior pituitary, you have many hormones, no? Ito silang lahat. Okay? So, merong table later, we will discuss each of the hormones. Ayan. But this table is referring to the hormones of the hypothalamus first. Okay? Kasi yung hypothalamus, as I mentioned before, merong apelyido, releasing hormone. Releasing hormone, releasing hormone. Although not every hormone is like that, no? Ang name, pero most of the time, kasi yun din yung action nila, no? They serve as releasing hormones. So let's see. First, your GHRH or your growth hormone releasing hormone. Okay? So, ang effect nito or the target tissue for this hormone will be your anterior pituitary cells. So, once there is the presence of a GHRH, anong gagawin ng anterior pituitary cells? It will increase its production and secretion of the growth hormone with the presence of a GHRH stimulating it. Now, meron kang opposite to that, which is an inhibiting hormone. Your growth hormone, inhibiting hormone, the other name is somatostatin. So, somatostatin, remember, this is an inhibitory hormone. No? Same effect to your anterior pituitary cells, but opposite ang kanyang inhibitory effect. So, it will decrease the growth hormone secretion. Another hormone, your TRH or thyrotropin releasing hormone. Okay, once it stimulates the anterior pituitary cells, it will make the anterior pituitary gland to release TSH or the thyroid stimulating hormone. The rest is your corticotropin releasing hormone or your CRH. No? Anong effect nito sa anterior pituitary cells? It will increase the production and secretion of your ACTH or your adrenocorticotropic hormone. Your gonadotropin releasing hormone or your GnRH, anong effect? To the anterior pituitary, it will increase now the secretion of your luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So these are all hormones that is reproductive hormones. Okay. Your prolactin inhibiting hormone or PIH and your prolactin releasing hormone or PRH, no? Same target. It's always the anterior pituitary and opposite din yung kanilang function respectively. Pag inhibiting hormone siya, prolactin will be decreased in secretion. Kapag releasing hormone siya, then it will increase the secretion of your prolactin. Okay? So, pag hypothalamus, as we mentioned, sila ang naga-produce nito and they store it in your posterior pituitary. Okay? So, we mentioned already kung saan itong mga effects ng dalawang hormone na to, no? Your ADH and your oxytocin. Okay? Okay, so we're done with the hormones of the hypothalamus. Now let's go to the hormones produced by your pituitary gland. So you know your anterior pituitary gland is stimulated or inhibited by the different hormones released, no, by your hypothalamus. Now once they are stimulated or released or inhibited, they release the following hormone in response. Okay? Yung first is your growth hormone. But before I continue, I'd just like to say, no, kung releasing hormones ang hypothalamus, your anterior pituitary gland would have an apelyido also with the hormones, no? They usually have this stimulating hormone, no? Stimulating hormone. Okay, so that's another clue for you if you are being asked to identify which a gland produces, no, a certain hormone. Okay. But the rest, no, yung iba walang ganon. So you still have to familiarize. No, okay, let's go back. For the growth hormone, which is also known as your somatotropin, the target organs or tissues of this hormone are most tissues, no? Kasi siya yung responsible for the growth of the tissues. Okay? Aside from growth, meron din siyang effect of increasing the amino acid uptake and protein synthesis, increasing the breakdown of lipids and fatty acids, and release of fatty acids from the cells, increased glycogen synthesis, and increased blood glucose levels, increased somatomedin production. So, madami siyang responses or effects. Na yung other hormone is your TSH, also known as your thyroid stimulating hormone. From the hormone itself, alam mo na saan siya, anong target gland niya. It's your thyroid gland. Once the presence of TSH, no, is detected by the thyroid gland, ano yung response? The thyroid gland, it will produce the thyroid hormones. Okay? Your thyroid hormones can either be a T3 or T4. Later, we will see ano yung effects, no, ng mga hormones that they produce too. The third hormone is your ACTH, also known as your adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay? Ang kanyang target tissue is the adrenal cortex. So your adrenal gland is made up of the adrenal cortex and an adrenal medulla. No, but your ACTH, doon siya sa portion ng cortex ang kanyang effect. Okay, so what does it do? It will make your adrenal cortex release the glucocorticoid hormones, no? Later, you will know ano yung mga glucocorticoid hormones. Then you have your MSH or your melanocyte stimulating hormone. From the name itself, alam mo na ang target tissue are the cells are the melanocytes in the skin. So they will stimulate the melanin production of the melanocytes, and this makes your skin darker. Okay, other hormones. You also have your luteinizing hormone, no, which are reproductive hormones. Target are your ovaries and testes. So anong response? This will be the hormone responsible for ovulation, and the ovaries will produce progesterone in response to your luteinizing hormone. Sa lalaki, okay, um, there will be an increase in the testosterone synthesis, and this hormone would support, no, sperm cell production. Okay. Next is your follicle stimulating hormone or FSH. So from the word itself, follicle, yan yung iyong target cells or tissues, no? The follicles in the ovaries. Kung sa female. If it's in the male, then it's the seminiferous tubes particularly. So what does it do? It stimulates the maturation of the follicle and increase the release of this hormone estrogen. And sa male naman, ang effect niya is to increase the sperm cell production. The seventh hormone here is your prolactin, no? So like I mentioned earlier, yung prolactin nyo would have an effect on the milk, no? That is for milk production. So, yung effect niya sa mammary glands and ovaries. Yan yung kanyang target tissues. So this one is responsible for milk production. If your oxytocin is for the milk excretion or expulsion or milk letdown, sa production itself it is your prolactin. Okay? So the prolactin would have an increased response of follicle to, so parang it will make your follicle sensitive to the hormone LH and FSH. Okay? Now, let's go to the major endocrine glands. All of this will be stimulated or inhibited depending on the hormones that are produced by the pituitary gland. Okay? So, for example, yung TSH ng pituitary gland would have an effect on the thyroid gland, and ito yon. It will stimulate the production of thyroid gland of your thyroid hormones, which are T3 and T4, and also stimulate the parafollicular cells to secrete calcitonin. So, ano yung effects nila? For T3 and T4, it's for the increase in metabolism or the metabolic rate. So, that's essential for normal growth and maturation. Okay? So, lahat ng cellular metabolism would response to the presence of your thyroid hormones. Now, for your calcitonin, no, it will have a particular target tissue, which is the bone. Kasi ano ang function ng presence ng calcitonin? It will inhibit the breakdown of the bone, no? Sino yung nagbe-breakdown ng bone? It's your osteoblast. So, it will particularly inhibit these cells to decrease the rate of breakdown of the bone. So, this prevents a large increase in the blood calcium level. Okay? So, kapag mataas yung calcium, i-inhibit yan ni calcitonin ang pag-breakdown ng bone para walang madagdag na additional calcium sa blood. Now, your parathyroid gland, these are glands, no? Apat ito, maliliit na glands around the area of the thyroid gland. Okay? These release your parathyroid hormones. Okay? Anong effect? So, it acts on your bones, kidneys, and small intestines. So, sa bone, it will increase the rate of its breakdown. No? So, stimulate niya ang mga osteoclasts to break down the bones. So, opposite sila with your calcitonin. When it comes to the kidneys, it will increase the absorption of calcium. Okay? In the small intestine, it will also increase the absorption of calcium. It will have a stimulatory, no, effect in the synthesis of vitamin D. And thus, all of this will result into an increase in blood calcium level. So they are opposite in effect. Next is your adrenal medulla. So ito na yung other portion of your adrenal gland. Earlier was the adrenal cortex, no? Ngayon, medulla. This will release when stimulated, your epinephrine primarily in the form of a norepinephrine. So these are the target tissues of these hormones, your heart, blood vessels, your liver, and adipose. Okay? Sa heart, it will increase the cardiac output. Sa skeletal muscles, they will have an increased blood flow and including to the heart itself. Okay? Sa blood vessels, they will make your blood vessels vasoconstrict, no? In the presence of these hormones. Okay? And then there would be an increase in the release of your glucose and fatty acids into the blood. And this is actually in preparation, no, for a certain physical activity. Okay? If you will do a vigorous exercise, if you are in danger, then you need to escape, no? Sympathetic nervous system response. Yan yung mga effects. Increase ang heart rate, increase ang blood flow sa muscles because you might be needing your muscles, no, to escape. Okay? If you're in danger, no? Example lang yun. Okay, the other portion is your adrenal cortex. So the cortex will release three types of hormones. A mineralocorticoid in the form of aldosterone. Okay, itong aldosterone would effect on the kidneys and they will increase sodium and potassium. No, increase yung sodium reabsorption tapos ilalabas niya si potassium and hydrogen. So remember, your endocrine system, isang function is ion regulation. Ito yun. No? This is the responsible hormone for that, your aldosterone. So kapag nandyan si sodium, water follows. That's why if you increase sodium reabsorption, then it means also water reabsorption. Okay? So parang antidiuretic hormone ang effect, no? So they usually work hand in hand to increase the blood volume. No? Si aldosterone and ADH. Now, your glucocorticoids release, no? Are your cortisol. Yan yung hormone. So, anong function ng cortisol? Okay? It increase protein and fat breakdown. It increase glucose production, no? So, if you have cortisol, mataas din yung glucose mo in the blood. We call this the stress hormone, no? Yung cortisol. Kapag stress ka yan, mataas ang release ng cortisol mo. And meron siyang effect, no, to the immune response. It is inhibitory to the immune response. That's why maraming gamot, no, steroids that will decrease inflammation. Yan yung mga gamot natin sa allergies, no? Kasi yun yung effect niya, no? Inhibition of immune response and inhibition of inflammation. Another hormone are the androgens. So, ito more on sex hormones to. This is responsible for the secondary sex characteristics no, you will see in puberty, such as the development of axillary and pubic hair. Now, you also have your pancreas. Your pancreas produces two major hormones, insulin and glucagon, which has opposite effect, no? They are regulating the blood sugar. Kung mataas ang blood sugar sa blood sugar level, insulin would have to be increased in secretion. Kasi si insulin, anong gagawin niya? Yung effect niya, target tissues would be the liver, skeletal muscle, and adipose. Anong gagawin niya? Yung presence ng sugar sa blood, it will increase the uptake of the glucose back to the cell para konti ang maiiwan sa blood. Okay? That's why siya ang needed if you have high glucose in the blood. Now, if kulang naman yung glucose in the blood, you need your glucagon. Okay? Your pancreas will secrete glucagon. So, the primary tissue, target tissue would be the liver. Kasi nandito yung stored glycogen mo. Yung glycogen, these are storage of your glucose, no? Forms of storage of the glucose. So, anong gagawin niya? It will stimulate the breakdown of the glycogen to release glucose in the blood. Okay? Okay, for our reproductive glands, yung testis for the male would have to release testosterone, and this will be responsible for the spermatogenesis, development of the male genitalia, the maintenance of the functions of your reproductive organs, the secondary sex characteristics, and the sexual behavior. Kung ovary, syempre, ito yung ating hormones, no, mga females, estrogen and progesterone. So, these are for the uterine and mammary gland development, no, the sexual characteristics of a female. And then, the menstrual cycle, siya din yung mga key hormone, no, involved. And then, it also will have an effect on the maturation of the genitalia. Yung next is pineal gland, which is responsible for the production of melatonin. Okay? Ang effect ng melatonin or ang target tissue niya is yung hypothalamus. What is the effect? If you have melatonin, it will inhibit your gonadotropin-releasing hormone. It will inhibit reproduction, no? Inhibitory si melatonin. But ito yung sikat sa kanya. It regulates the sleep-wake cycle. Okay? So, meron tayong gamot ng melatonin. It increase your sleepiness. Okay? So, if you are in a dark environment, kaya it will, yung madilim, no? It will increase the production of melatonin. That's why nakakatulog ka ng mabilis like that in that situation. You have another gland, thymus gland, okay, which is by 12 years old, this is non-functional, nawawala siya, no? Nawawala siya. So, from first 12 years old, it is present. What does it release? The hormone thymosin. This is for immune function. Okay? So, it will stimulate the development and function of your immune system. So, this is the last slide. And these will be the hormones that we will discuss. Hormones included for the exam. So that's all. Thank you.